Bauhaus Collective, in case you don't know it yet, is a grouping of 13 pan-European organizations. They are representing various branches of architects, spatial planners, interior architects, landscape architects, engineers, designers, artists, educators, researchers, not only from the built environment, rather from the whole cultural and creative sector. And let me go back a bit in history. Following the announcement of the new European Bauhaus by the President of the EU Commission, that was in September 2020, members of the NEB collective came together to discuss what would be the best support and the best means to contribute to this initiative. One of these means is this very online conference today. So in November, the NEBC published making the Renovation Wave a cultural project. Its key message is, and that is probably not surprising to you, and maybe you won't contradict, that culture is an absolute key driver of quality in the built environment, and that making the Renovation Wave a cultural project can be a game changer in the transition to a more sustainable economy and society, and even a more inclusive society, not only to be ecstatic, the whole process. So the why. Let's talk a bit about the spirit of the NEB. And this conference, it's designed to be very participatory, to be multidisciplinary, and it's enabling people from various academic and other backgrounds, professional backgrounds, to exchange ideas. And I really embrace you in this whole process, how to shape the new European Bauhaus. And what we are seeking for, generally spoken, is a holistic approach. Therefore, we are taking multi-perspectives into the game, how to foster sustainability, inclusivity, and beauty together. And the first question, to show you that this is a highly interactive conference, is going to you, and I embrace you and invite you to answer the question in the chat. How do you define beauty, a beautiful city? What defines a beautiful city? I'm very curious on your answers. You see the chat below. Please type it in the chat. We are very happy to see your answers. As your inputs are essential over the whole conference, when we, for example, have the first panel, we are delighted to have your questions, and I will fuse them in the discussions over the day. So the why to the conference is already answered. Something about the what. Opening and keynote speeches, this is what we are going to experience in a moment. Then we have a round table of an hour. Then we have various 11 and to discuss specific issues, and you can decide in which breakout session you go. We have a 1 hour lunch break, and then we have debriefing afterwards, and a feedback from the joint research center, which is very valuable to us, and finally a closing speech. So the whole conference in this main hall, not in the breakout sessions, will be recorded. You will find it afterwards as a video on demand. We have interpretation and translation available. So if you go to the bottom line, at the very right of your line, you see this little icon. There you can have simultaneous translation in English and French, vice versa. So if you encounter any technical problem, please be so kind and use our chat, and you will be helped immediately. And not to forget, this conference is organized with a great support from the Creative European Euro program, and we are very honored now to leave this virtual stage to the President of the European Commission for her opening speech. The floor is yours, Ursula von der Leyen.
Dear members of the new European Bauhaus Collective, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation. It is an honor for me to open this first event of the new European Bauhaus Collective. I am very happy to have such a strong, diverse, and competent group of organizations and people that support the new European Bauhaus initiative. With the creation of this collective, you did exactly what we had in mind when we launched the project. Bringing people together from different backgrounds and disciplines. Not only to amplify good ideas, but also to create future for Europe and our planet. Why is this so important? Let's take some minutes to look back at the original Bauhaus that was founded in Weimar and Dessau. You all know it quickly developed into a worldwide movement. The success of this movement was only possible because the founders succeeded in combining architecture with craft and design with innovation. They put the concept of interdisciplinary into practice every day. And until today, we can see how successful they were. We see their ideas in the buildings of our cities, in our furniture, in fabrics and art. Combining art with technology, bringing together innovation and creativity is key for deep transformation. And this is why the work of your collective is so interesting and so important for us. But this is not the only reason why the historical Bauhaus can be an inspiration for a new European Bauhaus. Let me mention two more. First of all, the historical Bauhaus was created in a time of profound transformation. People were facing the challenges of industrialization. The founders around Gropius aimed for solutions that were functional, affordable, but also beautiful. And the new European Bauhaus is also looking for this combination of aesthetics and affordability, but wish to add a very important third element: sustainability. The new European Bauhaus wants to match sustainability with style. We want to show that sustainable solutions can also be beautiful. The new European Bauhaus brings a cultural element to the European Green Deal. It wants to make the European Green Deal a tangible, touchable experience and bring it closer to the people. The third inspirational element of the historical Bauhaus is that it boldly promoted new materials like steel and cement. Today, we also need to look into new and sometimes old building materials. But this time, it's about climate-friendly materials that need less CO2 in their production process. The new European Bauhaus wants to accelerate the transformation of the built environment. It wants to scale up nature-based materials like wood and bamboo to support circular design and architecture. Buildings are responsible for 40% of our energy consumption. Only if we manage to change this, we have a chance to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. If we succeed, we will come a great deal closer to our big European goal, to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. To achieve this, we also count on your support and on your contributions. You are at the forefront of developing the new materials and processes. You are the decision makers on new buildings and renovations in your cities. You are planning and designing houses, schools, and hospitals. You can make this change happen and bring the Bauhaus to a new era. As you know, we are still in the so-called design phase of the project. Our concept is not ready yet. We want to shape it together with all people interested and together with you. We see some trends already emerging, And one of the most important trends is the focus on renovation and reuse of buildings. In the future, it should be an exception that a building needs to be scrapped. We should use our resources in a more responsible way. And smart renovation can play a major role here. And that's why the Commission proposed last year, together with the new European Bauhaus, the Renovation Wave. We will present additional measures like energy performance standards for buildings that will enhance renovation in the member states. And it's good to see that there seems to be a shift in thinking in the architecture community. For the first time in its 46-year history, the Pritzker Prize was awarded not for new buildings, but for refurbishment. The architects Anne Lacton and Jean-Philippe Vasal upgraded social housing buildings in Bordeaux by making them more energy efficient and more beautiful. And these award-winning architects showed, like many others, change is possible and it is fun. So let's turn our cities into urban forests. Modern and old European cities should capture CO2 instead of emitting it. And this brings me to the last point I want to share with you today. The role of local governments, regional decision makers, cities, and rural communities. This is where the change happens. We need you, the mayors, councillors, citizens. We need you for the green transformation on the ground. We know that public procurement plays a key role. Sustainability should become a more important criterion in this process. We will make proposals on this later this year. There are already so many good examples for green transformation in cities and villages all over Europe. We want to give them visibility and use them as an inspiration for others. I want to thank you again for your support and your contributions to this initiative. I also want to encourage you to participate in the new European Bauhaus Prize that we launched last week. The good news is, you still have some more weeks to apply with your projects. We are very much looking forward to get your feedback from the workshops that you will have today. It will be a valuable contribution to the design phase. And your spirit will help us to shape the concept of the new European Bauhaus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear President, for your most inspiring words. And now I feel a bit torn, either to ask you, dear public, because you are so amazing in the chat, all your input is so valuable to us, to either ask you what was inspiring from the words of the President now, from the opening speech, or rather leave it out and not ask you that question, because we have two outstanding keynote speakers now, and I don't want you to be distracted now from what they are going to say. So I'm very, very happy now to introduce our first keynote speaker to you, who is Lionel Devliger. He's an architect and historian by education, and he's also a project leader, designer, and researcher at Rotor. Many of you might know Rotor already. It's based in Brussels. He co-founded it in 2006. It is a cooperative design practice that investigates the organization of the material environment. It's not exactly an architectural firm in the traditional sense, but it has won numerous awards from international renowned architecture awards. So it fosters the debate on resources, waste, and obsolescence in the building sector through research projects, exhibitions, conferences, and publications. And I'm now very glad to hand over for the next 10 minutes the floor to you, Lionel.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you can see me.
Yes, we can. 100%.
Okay. Great. Good morning, new European Bauhaus Collective. When I think of the number of people this collective covers in so many countries, I realized I never talked to such an important, absolutely great. Thank you for trusting that I will have something relevant to say. And I actually have 3 things to say. The first one is this: architectural obsolescence needs to end. In the wake of the 1929 financial crash and the subsequent economic crisis, the American President Roosevelt launched the New Deal, a package of governmental measures to reboot the economy. Many of these measures supported industrial companies which vowed to increase productivity in exchange for steps to protect consumer rights as well as the rights of the workers in those factories, whose wages also increased. This in turn would stimulate household consumption as people had some money to spend. But the measures also brought artificial obsolescence into existence. Features consciously inbuilt in manufactured goods by their producers meant to guarantee that the market for these items would never be saturated, because buyers, now becoming consumers, would always want the latest models, the latest designs, the supposedly most advanced technology. Artificial obsolescence is not only achieved through hidden parts with a short lifespan. It is also a question of conspicuous design features that look brand new at some point and hopelessly out of fashion a few years later. The principle has fueled the endless consumption of goods on which the linear economy thrived for decades. In the post-war First World, all too often, willingly or not, architects and interior architects have been the henchmen of that logic by pushing for innovative features that make their creation look hopelessly out of fashion a decade or 2 later. Supposedly sustainable features are sadly often only adding to a long series of new fads. The result is that things which culturally were always considered just about perpetual have now entered the realm of consumer goods. Brussels, like so many other European big cities, has seen the demolition recently of numerous huge office buildings that were hardly 25 or 30 years old. The result is that the Belgian production of building and demolition waste has doubled between 2004 and today, while the consumption of virgin building materials to replace the obsolete sharply increased. Figures are equally dire for numerous other European countries. This needs to end. In the current climate, resource and biodiversity crisis, we can no longer afford to throw buildings away as if they were disposable goods. However sustainable the building that comes into place promises to be. How to end architectural obsolescence is too tough a question for this short talk. Here, I want to stand still for a second at what you want to summon when you evoke the historic legacy of entities such as the Bauhaus or the New Deal. The Bauhaus, founded by Walter Gropius and as a school for free and applied art right after World War I in Weimar, then Dessau and Berlin, was far ahead of its time in terms of the designs it advocated. The integration of disciplines, painting, sculpture, industrial design, architecture, photography, etc., has led to a fecund cross-fertilization and a steady stream of creativity that many a school of art or architecture tried to spark off ever since, seldom with the same success. But the Bauhaus was also the successor of the Werkbund, a school set up as part of a coordinated campaign by the German Kaiser to step up the concurrence with the British applied arts industry that had dominated the European metalware for much of the later 19th century. National economic interest certainly played a role. The Bauhaus, as a school meant to bring creative and visually talented young people to improve the designs of industrial manufacturers, can be seen as an important milestone in the development of appealing yet affordable, mass-produced consumer goods. Today, you might say that this agenda has been fully realized. A firm such as IKEA realizes a good deal of the promises held by the Bauhaus. Is that a problem? Well, yes, this is hardcore linear economy. The second thing I want to say is we cost too much. If Roosevelt could, in exchange for industrial stimulus packages, obtain better employment conditions, including unionization for the workers in American factories, most of these jobs have now migrated overseas, away from both the US and Europe. Much of the employment gravitating around the act of building in first world countries is now in the service industry. For every building effectively erected in our countries, a sizable chunk of the total budget goes to architects, engineers, sales representatives, facility managers, quantity surveyors, administration officials, interior designers, green building certifiers, etc. Actually, pretty much the range of professions the new European Bauhaus Collective is representing. The question comes up if, in the face of the current climate emergency and the need for direct intervention on the existing built fabric, to make the transition to carbon neutrality, we can still afford all these supplementary costs. The urgent need is for employment and wages for the steel-tipped boots on the ground, the people who will effectively do the work, using supplementary layers of insulation materials, for instance. It means that the NEBC, instead of acting as a lobby group that could very naturally claim its part of the money about to be spent by the European collectivity, could look at means to simplify the conditions of architectural production. What we need is to maximize the actual effect of every euro of public money spent. If this might appear as talking against the interests of this particular sector, well, hell then, yes. In our eyes, at Rotor, the European project can only become meaningful if it moves beyond the principle of shaping policy according to adding up interests or requests from several economic lobbies. And then the third and last thing I want to say is that we should bring people back to the building sites. Building sites were once the place where our finest architects emerged, such as Palladio or Borromini, who both started as stone cutters. Today, aspiring designers seldom spend much time on building sites, which have become conspicuously unwelcoming environments, dominated by the presence of heavy, diesel-powered machines. The dust, noise, and physical discomforts increase the idea that building site work is low status. Now, as I said, it is nevertheless here that things need to happen. The fine-grained renovations, the adaptive reuses, the thermoproofing. Imagine a building industry in which the designer would be on the building site, hauling materials and fixing cross-laminated timber just like the other workers. Wouldn't there be a lot of time and energy saved that otherwise goes to producing and reviewing tendering documents, plans, specification, and communicating the contract prices, discussing modifications, etc. We have now, with Rotor, almost 15 years of experience with second-hand building materials, which we routinely extract from buildings that will be demolished. We then refurbish these materials and integrate them in new projects. The size of the project we intervene on gradually grows. Well, the fact of working with these second-hand materials, which we do out of environmental conviction, is totally disruptive of standard procedure. No professional we encounter has ever been given instructions on how to deal with them. Not the regulator, not the contractors, not the engineers, not the insurance companies. Reused components are like the grain of sand in a well-oiled mechanism. Instinctively, everybody knows they should have an important place in building projects today. There is no greener brick than a second-hand brick, yet almost nobody knows how to deal with them. Taking them on board, from the perspective of each of these disciplines requires coordination and mental elasticity. Yes, creativity, the kind of creativity daily needed today. Among the many things we learned in these 50 years of practice stands the following truth. Physical work you perform on a material you know is ethical, compensates for many discomforts. The same applies, it seems, to sound biosourced materials. Hence, I believe we could, through the massive presence of such materials and reversible assembly techniques, boost a craftsman's or craftwoman's pride. This would help to turn deconstruction, transformation, and building sites into hospitable, uplifting places where one can just draw pleasure from a job effectively contributing to the common good by mitigating climate change, and then share that pleasure with the beholder. I have said some bad things about Roosevelt's New Deal. Now, it was certainly not all bad. It initiated a program called the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, a job program focused on nature conservation that at a certain point provided 2 million jobless men aged 18 to 24 with a wage and a professional training. The teams of the CCC fought erosion, planted trees, and built low-impact, high-quality infrastructure in numerous natural state parks in the US that often lasted until today. Imagine such a corps could be in the context of the European Green Deal. I talked about 3 things that are dear to our heart. Architectural obsolescence needs to end, we cost too much, and we should make the building site experience more satisfying. I apologize for having taken too much time, and thank you for your wish you an excellent conference. Thanks.
We thank you so much, Lionel. This is like I'm the timekeeper. I'm very sorry. I feel totally impolite.
Yeah, sure.
But if you had seen all the applause in the chat, there are a lot of people really applauding to what you say. There are some questions related to you in the F&A section below. So maybe you can text to answer these as we are running a bit over time. I thank you very much. You have so many vocabulary and thoughts that I will fuse into the later discussion. About the responsibilities that arise from that, affordability. So how can we think the things together? Thank you very much. And I will now broaden the bridge from Lionel to Stine Marie JACOBSEN. She's a great conceptual artist. She lives in Berlin and she's absolutely known for pulling the public into her artwork. So I'm now very, very curious, I hope with you, what she's going to do.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And thank you, the new European Bauhaus Collective, for inviting me. And Lionel, what a great keynote speech. My name is Stine Marie JACOBSEN. I'm a conceptual artist based in Copenhagen and Berlin, as Andrea also said. And I develop long-term participatory and educational projects with and by people, and also experts such as lawyers, scientists, and social workers. The type of art which I work with is called socially engaged art. It is like a half-built house because the participants finish the house with me. So as with all art, and maybe even a bit more, the final creation is unknown and uncertain to me. Since 2015, for example, I have, with my project Law Shifters, invited participants worldwide to rejudge court cases and write their own laws, which I then lobby to the public. I'm interested in civic legislative participation and to develop future models that best offer democratic participation to citizens. Today, I have been invited to keynote speak about my ideas on creativity, sustainability, multidisciplinarity, and the relationship between science, technology, and art. I have decided to talk about the notion of uncertainty. But to make my keynote speech a little bit more interesting, I need your help. While I talk, I would like to engage you, audience, in a fun exercise called Waterfall. It's very, very simple and goes like this. Every time, and you don't have to do it now, every time I say the word uncertainty, I would like you to write in the public chat your reaction and response, whatever you think or feel of when you hear the word. You can really write whatever you want, but the only rule or regulation or game is that you have to wait to post your response on the chat till you hear me say the word. Make sure that your chat is open. As Andrea also said in the beginning of the talk today, it's the little speech bubble on icon below. Click on it to open it. So every time I say the word, you will see a waterfall of responses to the word uncertainty. Not yet, don't do it yet. You can write anything you like. I will say the word many times, and sometimes I will say it right after each other. So you can write and prepare while I talk and have your response ready. Just wait with posting until I actually say the word. I hope you feel like doing this. Trust me, my keynote speech is going to be so much more fun if you play along. Okay, here we go. The world around us is in flux. With every day, it feels like we move further away from fixed structures and predictable phenomena. It's upsetting the balance of how we prefer to interact with the world. This growing uncertainty, and now you can post if you want, plays havoc with our normal input-output model for interacting with the world, where we construct meaning from external stimuli and use them to plan our behaviors and responses. Can working together in uncertainty recover a form of humanism? Yes, perhaps, if we communicate our wonder, confusion, doubt, and humor. It can enable forms of collaborations that allow for multi-sensory entry points, greater accessibility, and broader range of learning. Some say the Western world has lost a bit in uncertainty. The writer and thinker Sarah Ahmed says that when we have the same feeling, we don't necessarily have the same relationship to the feeling. I can see the waterfall. Emotions can involve miscommunication. This is great. Thank you so much for. The relationship between art and politics is a tricky one. Art has a long history in lobbying ideologies. Art is a non-neutral way of processing things in a very specific way, while still being able to host uncertainty or cover it where it shouldn't. Oh, I like it. I saw it like another movement of post on the chat. Artworks define and depict human conditions, social relations, and exchanges, while tackling the questions of biopolitics, social change, gender identity, crisis, and conflicts. Art directly re-questions our values and understandings of changing processes that prevail to dominate. Art is not neutral. Art gets more attention than the real topics it simulates, because it is easier to look at things indirectly. Art and cultural work moves in invisible ways and carries so much structures of values, power, and colonial behavior within it. Terms are being used and abused when we become too certain. We cultural workers need to be conscious of the emotional and value-centric power our work can wield, and we must make more ethically deliberate choices. I try to avoid my own limited knowledge by passing on my unfinished ideas to others, and I invite them to develop it further with me. I always trust the collective intelligence around me, because knowledge is never complete. Very totalization. Nothing can be all-including. Uncertainty is to always check your privileges. By whom, for whom, and with whose interest in mind are you acting? For many with power and privilege, race, gender, and class are OPP, other people's problems. Do institutional plumbing in your houses and look self-critically at your systems. Diversity doesn't guarantee a non-racist system. Practice what you preach. Words have become so empty that solidarity disappeared and crawled onto a teenager's hoodie. Radical solidarity is to understand that one man's uncertainty is another man's daily diet. Great, we're getting in sync here. That's awesome. What is fatalism for one person is fact for another. So make your actions accountable, traceable, and visible. The whole world is problem solving at the same time, but justice and needs remain in the eye and veins of the beholder. We all carry unconscious biases. Psychologist Paul Bloom writes in his book with a provoking title, Against Empathy, that humans tend to empathize more with like-minded people who look like them. As an artist, I always try to reprogram myself to think differently, to reflect whether my sense of justice or ethics is really fitting the situation. I even sometimes tell my participants not to trust me. So I practice active listening, and sometimes it's hard because it requires me to change and evolve my ideas, my convictions, and my way of doing things. This pandemic has intensified our dependency on technologies to optimize our information and knowledge exchange. There are many great democratic web platforms and projects that share their knowledges on. However, many say that our current internet is broken. But the good news is that new digital internets are actually being built right now, which will be decentralized, they will be more human-centered, democratic, and they will create a new digital ecosystem for us. Because too many companies curate and regulate our data, and they have become so powerful that they can decide what is allowed to exist in our digital public. So in order to keep a common digital space, we need to regulate big internet corporations much better. Say who you are and why you are here. I always write down and try to communicate my needs, my expectations with my collaborators before we start a collaboration. And I make conflict analysis because no matter where I work, there will always be an uncertainty between me and my surrounding environment. So I try to stay open, incidental, and group-orientated. I just recently read a Zapatistas manual for nonviolent protests, which was published in Mexico in 1995, right after the uprising in Chiapas against the Mexican state. It says, it should be kept in mind that the analysis of the situation is everyone's business, as personal approaches enrich the conclusions and the participation of the majority of the people. This is fundamental when it comes to creating group conscience. Sustainability doesn't happen if one person is in control of the narrative. Instead, it happens in diverse groups where multiple perspectives can be amplified. And to give you a little bit of a tool here at the end of my keynote speech, I believe metaphors can be a great tool to practice embracing. A metaphor can communicate how someone else understands you. So tell, for example, someone about your work and ask them to describe a metaphor for the way that for the way that they think you are working. They will have to listen deeply in order to make a good metaphor. A good colleague of mine once told me that my artwork is like a house where I leave the windows open so visitors can water my plants while I'm away. I still don't know if it was a critique or a compliment. I think it was a compliment. Thank you so much for listening, and may the soft power of uncertainty be with you today. I look very much forward to this conference today.
Sine, that was outstanding. It wasn't, I have goosebumps because when you were doing it, you crashed the Zoom. You crashed the, it was not undemocratic that we didn't leave people in or something like that. It was really that too many messages.
Oh my God.
Taking over. Therefore it stopped. And
oh my God.
We also asked you to put the questions below in the FNA because we didn't want to stop everything at the same time. So thank you very much. Thank you for this very touching metaphor with watering the plants. We are in the midst of the subject. And thank you to all of you out there, hundreds of people, for really showing your collective intelligence and this incredible empathy. So Stine, thank you very much again. And yeah, how important it is to have multiple voices. And it brings us straightly to the panel that we have been preparing. And I have another collaboration question for you. But first, let me introduce a thought. Because we have, for example, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have the Urban Agenda for the EU. We have the Davos Declaration. We have the New Leipzig Charter. So we have a lot of institutional documents at international and European levels that really try to foster the ambition that we are addressing here. So next roundtable is to bring 6 great representatives from cities and municipalities in Europe, very diverse European spots, together to share the ideas. How can we bring this vision into life and praxis of sustainability, inclusivity, and aesthetics and beauty? So, but before I'm introducing them, and they all get 90 seconds of elevator pitch each, and then we deep dive for the next almost an hour into the discussion. I really would like you to, over the time of the next hour, let's say, to create a word cloud, what you are expecting from the new European Bauhaus. So please go on menti.com, we put it in the chat, menti with an I, menti.com, and type in the code 24522178. And there, what do you expect from the new European Bauhaus in 1 or 2 words? Please, very short sentences if you need it for an expression. And we try to open a window up for it that you can see something about your own expectations, because this is a collective movement and we want to make it very powerful. So now, a brief introduction. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much for starting. We put that to the side now. As you can see, real change, transformation. We are working on it, and we will build another poll on it at the end of this very conference. So please stay tuned. Now, next session. I want to introduce in a minute the speakers to you. But first of all, we have a map of Europe, and with this beautiful tree from the European Commission that we are allowed to use. We have Cluj, we have Paris, Barcelona. You can watch it up where what is. We have Oslo, Zwischenwasser as a municipality, and Munich. So I'm very, very happy now to start with our first, and here you have some data, which is reliable. It's not all comparable in itself, but it's definitely not famous. About the cities. You will find this map also in the chat later if you want to watch it up again. And I'm now very, very happy to introduce to you our first speaker with his 90 seconds elevator pitch. It's Emil Boch, and he's the city of Cluj-Napoca mayor. So very glad to have you here. I hand over the microphone now to you, Emil. I hope you're there. And if I see you, if I don't...
Thank you so much. It's everything
okay? Now I can see you. I hand over to you.
Pleasure. Thank you. It's a great honor and pleasure to be together. Greetings from the very heart of Transylvania, Romania, Cluj-Napoca. If I want to describe my city in 4 letters, T, that would be talents, technology, tolerance, and trust, and everything in an inclusive manner. It's a city of innovation who have been in the final of European Capital of Innovation last year. It's a place where the East meet the West and the West meet the East. So the place where we try to build up an innovation vibe, where architects, artists, engineers, professors are working together to design the future of the city. And I want to mention we have a Center for Civic Imagination and Innovation, where we discuss the future of our city, bringing together all the experts and all the citizens to build up a resilient, green, and digital city. Last but not least is the place where we are testing the innovation solutions. We want to move from the made in Cluj-Napoca to invented in Cluj-Napoca. What does it mean? We offer the city as a lab for the innovation framework in order to test all the solutions, from architects to IT, from digital and artificial intelligence, music. So we try to create this innovation vibe, as I said, because innovation cannot be dictated from Brussels. Innovation is taking place in every corner of Europe. You have to create the ecosystem in order to promote innovation. What is the main element? Ecosystem, not ego system. That's the fundamental approach of our city, working together in multiple helix approach, in eco, not ego approach. Thank you.
That was so quick. I didn't even
90 seconds, I can do 90 minutes.
But so many T's and so much energy in the room. I'm so glad that you're on board, and we will definitely and desperately come back with questions to you later to deep dive into this, how you made invention, and so I'm really looking forward to your answers. And please, I really want to embrace our audience to type questions for our panel to be asked later. And I'm now very happy to hand over to Paris. It's Emmanuel Grégoire of the city of Paris. He's the vice mayor for urbanism, architecture and Grand Paris. Je suis très enchantée que vous êtes ici. Emmanuel Grégoire, et je crois que c'est en français en ce moment-là, and I very much invite you to now plug the button if you want to hear not French, rather English, to use the live translation.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and hello to everybody and also my colleagues, mayors or representatives of the other cities or municipalities for this collective. I must say that in Paris, we find this inspiration very useful, very stimulating, and we will certainly take part in this initiative for a new European Bauhaus. We think that this approach is really gathering a lot of approaches of many cities, bigger and smaller cities, and many things that we are facing. The energy transformation, the social stakes, also employment, which is so important for our citizens and for our ecosystems in the cities. And maybe, as I only have 90 seconds, I can maybe mention 3 projects inspired by this new European Bauhaus. And these are that work that we started in Paris in order to produce a new city urbanism planification to adapt ourselves to the climate emergency, and also at society level, the pact for construction also with our partners, the industry, the building industry, and also the promoters or developers, and an initiative which philosophically is also very close to Bauhaus, which is the new manifesto for a new Paris city, and respect for tradition in this framework and the heritage of our European cities, which have a certain charm that we want to preserve also. We always have to be very modest when we are working at new cities and the architecture of new cities, of course. So this is at stake. And I work with our mayor, Hidalgo, and she salutes you also.
Merci beaucoup à vous.
Thank you very much. We already have a number of questions.
Merci beaucoup à vous. Et nous avons une autre
personne. Ask you the question. We have another representative, Xavier Matilla.
Chief architect, and they also are doing great stuff in order to bring aesthetics and sustainability and inclusivity together. So I will hand over for the next 1.5 minutes to Xavier.
¿Sí, conecto micro?
See, we can hear you.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you so much to the new European Bauhaus Collective from Barcelona. We are really enthusiastic for the new European Bauhaus initiative. What we are really actually questioning is how will be possible living in cities in the near future. And we already know that it will only be possible if cities are able to achieve two goals: revert the climate crisis and generate a new sense of community. So we must unfold a new urban model, which means indeed a cultural change, a new way of understanding what means living in cities, a new urban lifestyle with new solutions, new materials, new technology, and of course, a new design and a new concept of beauty. A new urban beauty as a reflection of a new paradigm that shows how we want to live in our cities, as a reflection of a healthier, more equal, and a more flourishing city for everybody. A new urban beauty that makes us all happier in our cities. This is what we are working on in Barcelona right now. Superblock Barcelona, well-known program, means a new urban model that is already transforming the entire city of Barcelona in a better place for its inhabitants, with better environmental and social conditions. A city where it's possible to find the streets with children playing or elderly. It also means a new urban economy development based on a new mobility and proximity. Superblock program also means a new public space design. We are working on a city transformation while innovating, achieving better environmental conditions, more social life and inclusive conditions on the streets. And of course, creating a new urban landscape that shows us a new idea of beauty in the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we will also resonate on your things of Superblock, etc. So we will come back to that. Thank you very much to Barcelona, and I'm now traveling to the city of Oslo, to the Vice Mayor for Urban Development, who is Rasmus REINVANG. And maybe it's interesting to share that he's representing Norway's Green Party within a coalition, a city government, which also includes the Social Democratic and the Socialist left parties. And he has been with the leadership of Oslo since the winning election on a local level in autumn 2015. So, Rasmus, handing over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea. I was impressed by your knowledge about Norwegian politics. That was great. Dear mayors and dear hosts in the Secretariat, I am very honored to be invited to this, the first roundtable for a conference for the new European Bauhaus. This project surely deserves every success, and I'm sure that we as city leaders will embrace it. Our priorities in Oslo for the last several years have been the environment, participation, and social inclusion, as well as improving the overall quality of the built city with a new architectural policy. Oslo has been running a local network called Future Built for the last 10 years. It's a network quite similar to the In the Future Built network, builders and architects showcase public and private projects which meet Oslo's strict objectives. Many of the projects are reusing and renovating existing buildings and building materials, as well as focusing on public space and neighborhoods. A recent example is a fully refurbished 1950s office building in our inner city. 80% of the materials in the new building have been reused from other demolished buildings around the city. And it's beautifully done. Everything has a story. The greenhouse gas footprint is 70% lower, and the building is fully equipped with used furniture. This location now gives office space over 8 floors. From our own experience at the local and regional level, the new European Bauhaus has every chance to make a difference. The initiative is both timely and visionary, and I'm sure that we can all embrace it and work together to make it a European success. And we will be happy to share our experiences from the Future Built network and also other things we're doing up in Oslo. So congratulations on launching the new European Bauhaus, and Oslo looks forward to taking a further part in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. You are in the midst of the topic of the renovation wave, so it will definitely be a topic how to use already existing buildings, but really to bring them to the next level of sustainability. We come back to that. I'm now very happy to introduce our municipality, a cherished municipality, beautiful, of Zwischenwasser, which is a rural area. And somebody was writing in the chat, you're missing the connection between urban and rural. So he's a former mayor and he's a board member of Landluft, and I guess he might be switching to German. We see, but you have the English translation below if you plug the button on the right side. Josef Mattis. I know I've seen you. You have been there.
Yeah, hello all together. Great to see you. Europe consists not only of big cities, but as well of small communities. And I am delighted to be here as a representative of a small community with 3,000 inhabitants. I had the privilege of being a full-time mayor in my community for 33 years. And well, I had quite some time to have an influence on the development of our city and the future viability. This includes in particular building culture, Baukultur. Building culture cannot be decreed from above. A building culture must be lived locally at local level by the citizens. And this requires a suitable framework conditions such as political commitment. Well, we've got the Davos Declaration at European level. We've got the building culture guidelines in Austria at national level. We've got in the districts spatial development plans. And in the municipality, we have design statutes. We have this in Germany. We have guidelines for construction like in Austria. Well, if you want to think about the future, you need different levels to get involved, European, national, and local level. And all these together need a vision or an objective of where they want to go to. Cities need to know where to go, otherwise all these processes and ideas and visions lead nowhere. And once you have a vision, you can make sure that you help the ideas to develop with subsidies for design, with advisory boards, for education, for good architecture. Okay, so you create a vision, you create framework conditions, you create guidelines, and then you can support with subsidies. And this leads to good architecture and craft work in this context can make a very good contribution. And I will give some examples for this later on.
To exactly how do you do it with the Leitlinien and the Beiräte and these commissions, and how is the process? We come back to that. Thank you very much, Josef. And we have another last speaker, which is Professor Elisabeth Merk from the city of Munich. She's planning director and governing member of the city council and president of DASL. So very happy to have a female contributor on board, working on gender balance heavily, also in the Nebc. So I have seen you already. I know you are out there.
Yes, hello. I hope you can hear me now.
Perfectly. Perfectly fine.
So, dear all, thank you for these initiatives. And here in Munich, we try to create a new city sense, a new understanding of city, solidarity, beauty, and respect of nature. And I think we should create a city of participation regarding our society and a city of cooperation regarding nature, but also regional approaches. So I have three main aspects. One is public space, the importance of public spaces, a new concept in our case for the inner city towards renewed public spaces, car-free areas, sustainable solutions for climate adaptation, and also developed by design elements, respecting historic heritage. Second point is creativity. I think social and cultural interaction as a driver for the city of tomorrow is immense important. And we have some projects. One is the Creative Quarter, where performing arts startups like the Munich Urban Collab cooperation with the Technical University brings together theory, practice, and innovation on a place, together also with affordable housing cooperatives. I think this neighborhood aspect is very, very important. And the third aspect is inclusion, as you mentioned before, and participation. And we have a very interesting project also in the inner city called Bellevue di Monaco, and they give us a very strong impulse for public and civil society and multifunctional use. It's a project where a building complex should be destroyed and then was renovated and transformed by this cooperative to an integrated place, new designed, where inspiration and integration happens with all the people around, with refugees and projects, giving people a chance, not on the edge of the city, but really in the center. It's an open house with a basketball place on the rooftop, the first one in the city, and really a contribution to a new understanding of neighborhood and society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The good news is this fantastic building and its story, which is really an incredible story, will be shared later in the pause at 11:45 in the coffee break. So the first link that we put in, how this became a funny, a bit strange thing, and then was awarded with Sonderpreise, etc. So we will share that. My mind is now really, it's burning, both parts of the brain, where to start. Maybe before coming to Zwischenwasser very fast, I would stick with this renovation wave idea and really ask you in depth. How can we make sure, because this is something happening also in the chat all the time. Yes, we keep what we already have and to have are responsible to transform it on to the next level. So what is key, what is necessary to really organize a renovation wave which has quality, sustainability measures, and which is inclusive? This is an open question to all of you. Who wants to jump in first? What are key factors that we desperately have to talk about? Please jump in. The first, Rasmus, you go.
Thanks for this interesting question, Andrea. And I think at least some important aspects we've noticed in Oslo is that, first of all, there's a lot of regulatory complications when you try to reuse and refurbish. So we see that there's really a need to clean up. It's often much easier to just tear down and build something new instead of doing the documentation of the quality of the reused material you're going to use, etc., etc. So we see that in Norway, we need to clean up all the regulations so that we can make it even more simple and easy and cost-effective to reuse. And another aspect I wanted to really highlight that we focus on is that, well, you need participation in the planning phase. Often
how do you organize that? To be very precise, and who is participating, and how do you make sure that this is inclusive?
Well, we have a basic requirement in the building law for having participation, but we see that we need to do more than that, because we have some special design programs in the inner cities often where we use, what do you call it? Like mappings, where we have a facilitator going out with children and they're putting up like a green sticker. This is a nice area. This is the thing we like. This is what we miss. And then we try to map the different stakeholders and what they need from the project, so that it plays a part in the overall social structure. And that's often ignored in the traditional process. You need to see the social dynamics the new project will come into, and then you have to map it. And often we need to reach children, elderly, maybe people with not the same language skills as the average population, to really make it inclusive.
And maybe I can drop that question to somebody else. talking about mapping, that mapping is key. And I really would resonate further on that question. How do you make sure that you have different stakeholders co-creating in the process? Maybe we can broaden and make sure that this is still addressing affordability. Who else wants to join in?
I can
Please, Elisabeth, go on. Yes, go on.
An element. We do formal and informal participation with different tools, and one is named Bürgergutachten. I don't know how to translate it exactly. So citizens are called in, like when you make these questionnaires, and so you have different social status, different age, different different backgrounds, and they are like a workshop group giving a study for 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week, to a problem, to a place. And this then in a second process is combined with our more formal process of participation. So you really have a group of independent citizens with different backgrounds, which then are enabled to give an own expertise, which is like a recommendation to the city, to the municipality. And normally beforehand, it's established that our city council will respect also this in the process.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah, that's not always the case. Yeah.
By this, we do very simple things like Stadtspaziergänge, just walk around, because this is not so complicated to get in. And sometimes towards this, people are interested and then follow also our other different possibilities of participation. So we do a mix, let's say. But this Bürgergutachten, maybe somebody...
Okay. Somebody said in the chat, it must be something like citizen appraisal perhaps, or a citizen design review. So this is like something like a Bürgergutachten. There's one quick question to you related, Rasmus. Are you referring to the planning for real participatory tool perhaps? Are you referring to that?
I'm not sure actually. We have different tools, but if it's the exact one you mentioned, I'm not totally sure of.
Okay, I would like to draw the question a bit further also to the others. And maybe I come back to Cluj. You have addressed these 4 T's, like consisting of talent and tech and transparency and trust, for example. What are the bottlenecks and what are the real challenges in making this a success? Maybe you can tell us a bit about the dark side of the coin of your great success story in Cluj.
I think the key is to have the citizen on board. For example, Renovation Wave. There are 2 sides of the coin. First, public buildings. It's our duty, our common interest to build up a green and have a renovation wave. And here, less bureaucracy is really helpful, and Rasmus is really right. The second one are the private buildings, and how can we get the citizen on board? Again, less and very clear specification, and second, allowing us to integrate different funds, synergy of funds, European funds, local, regional, national funds, in order to have a successful innovation wave, because we do have the talents. The second element which I do emphasize is to create, as I said, that innovation vibe, where to have the ecosystem that everyone is a part of it and working together. We do have the advantage of having 100,000 students. 30% of our population is under 30 years old. So we do have the context to be innovative. The local authorities have to create a framework they should express. And for example, we do have an open international competition for all public spaces to modernize, from riversides, for parks, and so on. And it's an incredible competition for that, to have talents and to express themselves. And we create the tools to manifesto. This is the Center for Civic Imagination. I think it's one of the best tools to bring together all the experts, architects and artists, musicians and citizens. And it's fabulous to see how the ideas are coming on. So in my view, every city must think and act green, digital, innovative, and inclusive. Not later, now.
Okay, we got that message. And I want to draw the message maybe to Barcelona and to Zwischenwasser, because I would like to know from you, in, for example, Superblock, in this whole movement and in the experiences you made, how did you, and I come back to the keynote of Lionel, how did you create the building sites itself as an adventure? How did you bring people into the process? So how did you really make it a success? Maybe first Barcelona, and then we'll...
I think there is a thing that it's very important to be aware of, and from the city councils we must explain also to people that just to understand that renovation processes are not an individual process, it's a collective process, it's an interest of the whole city itself. For example, when we are talking about how to renovate the building stock of the city, that for us is a very important challenge. Of course, we are talking about how to improve the conditions of the dwellings in an energetic way, accessibility, but we are also talking about how this renovation process is able to generate a new urban landscape. So all the individual renovation processes in buildings is absolutely linked with our global renovation of the landscape of the city. If we are also talking about public space like Superblock program, it's even more clear in this situation. It's important to know that before every Superblock project in Barcelona, we create what we call a group, an interest group formed by all the people and all the organizations and associations that are really interested in the process. Even the people, the individual people who is living in this Superblock area, this group, together with the techniques of the city council, is the group who generate the action plan for the Superblock. By the very beginning, I think it's very important to understand that citizens and all the people interested in the renovation process have to start their participation from the very beginning. In Superblock program, they do that as with this.
Sorry, can I ask you, when is the very beginning in your case? When? At what state?
Yeah, yes. At the moment that we decide that there are an area that can be transformed in Superblock way. So we have to identify which are the best areas of the city to organize mobility or to initiate these transform processes. Because when we decide that we have an area to transform, the first step is to generate this group, this work group with people in order to define which will be the action plan.
And there are all the stakeholders in, really, civic society, artists, builders, handcrafts, architects, city planners, all with on eye level.
And this is a group that will be working till the end of the process. So it's an ongoing group, not just at the beginning, start at the beginning, but it's working at the same pace that the works are going on.
And I want to, thank you very much. I want to fuse Paris in before I come to Zwischenwasser, because if I'm right, you have some things like Révision du plan local d'urbanisme, which is a kind of diagnostic, and then you have La Manifeste pour la nouvelle esthétique. That brings me to the aesthetic, to the question of beauty in Paris. And I would like to know from you, est-ce que c'est plus rigidité, ou est-ce que c'est...
Is it more rigidity, or is it more fluidity for creativity and arts in this process? If you could please tell us. First, Andrea, I want to tell you that I find myself in the word that you used about Paris. Paris is a very dense city, and its city fabric is obviously some kind of transformation policy, city policy, and how should we do this, taking into account beauty? First of all, we are not going to reduce cities with a heritage to their past history. In Paris, we are the guardians of that heritage, that beauty, if you want. But the city cannot stay as it is and never evolve anymore. Paris has the same problems as any other city, and fortunately also the good aspects. But how can you preserve beauty and still think of new evolutions and new forms of architecture and society evolution? If you have a clear vision, that you convey a clear vision, like Bauhaus in this respect, you have to show sufficient humility in the implementation of your vision. I share the ideas that were expressed by my colleagues. It is central in the participation of citizens. And this is also, of course, something that requires a consensus. You have to engage people in this process. And so stay true to your past history, to your heritage, and still want to transform it, to make it evolve. These are really central themes. For instance, the energy renovation of our buildings, which is very important in the carbon process in our cities. If you have a very old building, it has really very difficult constraints. And in cities, it is difficult to refurbish the outside of the building. You have to work from the inside, which is really very difficult and requires a lot of investments. And I tell to the architects some are listening here that their role is really fundamental. They are really the artists, the craftsmen, who can implement these policies, and they can be very ambitious, but they have to talk to the public authorities, cities, states, and so on, and abide by the regulations, of course, which are also applicable in all countries, I think. So we need to have a dialogue also with the citizens, because we are telling history from the past, but beyond all these policymakers, citizens have to share these visions voluntarily. So at the same time, bottom up and top down. To me, yes.
Thanks to Paris. I want to go to Zwischenwasser now. Maybe we don't talk so much about Renovation Wave in the moment. I would rather ask you in Zwischenwasser, what do you precisely do? Wie machen Sie das in Zwischenwasser mit Ihren Räten? Wie werden
What do you do with your city council and the different groups? I see you have architects in the planning groups, and you say you have a long-lasting construction culture. What can we learn from you? What are you doing concretely? Well, in our small community, it is quite easy to involve the citizens. It's easier than in big cities. And so we have city councils, citizens councils, so interest groups, combining all kinds of citizens that are interested. The disadvantage is that the result of this Citizens' Council is not mandatory. And you have to see that the final decision is taken by City Council. And it's not like a Christmas event or Easter event with gifts being distributed. City Council is deciding in the end. And participation is one thing. Beauty, aesthetics are another question. So we wanted to involve citizens in the long run with regard to these questions as well. And this has proven to be successful because people identify with the result and the buildings that are built. And another aspect is sustainability and sustainable development. One event, construction event, made us think as politicians. Actually, we had a solar-heated small school that has been created, and the planning started out in 1988. This was a pilot project back then, and it was very special. And we informed the citizens, we informed ourselves. The citizens wished to have this solar-heated school. So it was a very first important project to us, and we had a competition for the architects. And finally, we saw building has to do with quality as well. Construction is linked to quality. Planning, building is a process and a joint development process. Building culture, I do think, is not an elitist event on behalf of an architect. No, it's you and me and the citizens who have to be behind the concept of a building like a small school, and it becomes a social event.
To broaden the question now, thank you very much. Learning from Zwischenwasser, somebody said you should be awarded the NEB prize, which is just like brought into life. I would like to know from you, listening to everything we say, we talk a lot about bottom up, about participation, about the multi-stakeholder. To ensure the role of arts, culture and creativity in the process, what is key? Talking about the new European Bauhaus initiative and putting handcrafts and arts and culture in the very heart of the Green Deal. What do we have to talk about? What didn't we talk about yet? Where do we have to overcome ivory towers? Where do we have to interconnect more than before? What can we learn from your great initiatives to put culture at the very heart of the initiative of the NEBC and the outcomes for reducing greenhouse gases? What shall we do? What is desperately needed to talk about? It's an open question to all of you. Please, Rasmus.
Well, at least one suggestion from my side is that we need to, what is very positive with this approach is that you have to tailor-make projects when you want to refurbish and do the reuse. And that is often quite labor intensive. So there is a definite positive correlation between this initiative and also providing green jobs. So to design the whole framework so that you make it more economically feasible for developers to go this direction at the same time as you're showing the real social benefits of integrating this, also by providing jobs, etc. I think that can create a broader foundation for this work and also bring more people in unions, etc.
Okay, interesting idea. Any other thoughts?
Yes, I like to come back what Lionel says in the beginning. I think we have also to talk about consumption and speculation. I mean, water, air, ground, these are our main resources. And then second, even cities who are building a lot of new buildings. It's not only about new buildings, we have to take care for the existing building stock. How get we really in this renovation wave, also in terms of heritage protection, nature protection, and how can we organize ourselves better? And I like to mention as a Bauhaus director, Hannes Meyer, because I think he had quite interesting ideas related to a cooperative approach to get all these things done. So my input maybe is to talk also about the organization. How can we bring all these good ideas in reality on the ground?
And you know what's very interesting? While you're talking, somebody also says heritage can be the catalyst for our approach to these challenges. It reminds me of the discussion yesterday. We had a great discussion with 30 arts students from art schools all over Europe. It was also facilitated by the NEB, by ELIA and the University of the Arts. And interestingly enough, these students come from all over the world. They study in Europe, and they say we need a lot of old wisdom, also indigenous people, etc., in the frame. So we have to foster and use technical means like digitization, etc., to spread it and to co-create with it. So to bond between the old and the new. This was just an idea that reminded me of this. We might share the outcomes later, perhaps on in the chat. Next question, or same question. What else should we definitely talk about? And maybe in self-criticism. If you did it again, what you are doing on your chair, what would you do differently in order to organize sustainability, aesthetics, and inclusion if you were to start with the processes today? Okay, so if everything is perfect,
I think we have now. I'm talking more like an architect and less maybe than an urbanist. We have some projects who are going through years, like our new Central Station. It's now a 20-year long-lasting project, and what I'm bringing now into reality is like a dinosaur. So we have to look in our processes, like Rasmus said, but also keep maybe processes more open. So if I could do this again, I would change completely the
that's interesting. Can I drop that question to Rasmus? You wanted to answer anyway. We are seeking for holistic approaches and interdisciplinary since the very first minute of this conference. So would you open up even more at a certain spot? You wanted to say something differently, but I want to connect that with this question also. Rasmus.
Well, I think definitely a point which I like from the Future Built network we have is that we work through like pilot projects where you showcase new solutions. That often brings different people together to try to do something new. And that is very inspiring, and it also shows that it can be done. So that is a great approach which we enjoy. And I wanted to add one element also, talking about maybe like a hidden elephant in the room, because what I see is that all the land, the plots are owned by private developers. So that, yes, one thing is that from the municipality, we have goals we want to facilitate, but there are some people, often private companies, owning the land, and we need to call them out and make them take responsibility and saying, yeah, we are city developers, we're playing a role here besides building in a cost-effective manner for our shareholders so that they are engaged. Because sometimes it's like they're hiding a little bit, and then we have these discussions where they're not present, but they're very, very important players, and we need to pull them further in, make them responsible, and also make it economically feasible for them to do the right things.
Maybe, sorry, Emil, you wanted to say something for long. Thank you very much, Rasmus. I don't see you on the gallery. I just realized, how can I broaden my gallery? Emil, thank you very much for jumping in and connecting with what you just said. Yeah.
Just want to mention that should be top down and bottom up. Top down, for example, you need to do very clear rules, even you are unpopular as a mayor, for example. We forced our citizens to pay 3 or 4 times bigger taxes if they do not renovate buildings in order to be safer and in good condition and with aesthetical means. So you cannot be just popular and not take the right decision for the city.
Yeah, but sorry, Emil.
Yes, sorry.
No, not sorry. This brings me to another question. And you make sure that you will be re-elected with this politics?
4 or 5 times I was being elected in the city, because you are not here to do and to please everyone. You cannot have such a policy. You have to take the right decision for the city, and you have a local decision. You pay 5 times higher taxes if you do not renovate your building. So We have the money, European money, Renovation Wave. We provide subsidies from the city. The citizen cannot be passive, cannot stay and do all the work without the citizen. So you need a strong message from the mayor office that something must be done. On the other way around, from bottom up, we have the participatory budgeting process. So every citizen is able to decide how can we spend some part of the money for the city, and especially from green, digital, and resilient. And we focus on green because, as I said, smoking is avoidable, but air pollution is not. So we offer to the citizens the possibility to bring and to support from the mayor office.
Okay.
But should be both sides.
Okay, Emil, I can imagine, as I don't have enough experience, I can imagine through regulation and certain things you can secure green investing, reducing CO2 gas emissions, etc. And you can even organize maybe inclusivity, how to organize the societal mixture in housing, etc. But coming to the aesthetics and the role of culture, and this is a broad question to all of you, this is a very slippery slope because beauty also lies in the eye of the beholder. And we are not talking about taste. So if we talk about aesthetics, and this is an open question to Zwischenwasser and to everybody of you, how to make sure that this aesthetic approach is inclusive in a way, but still ensures quality. So I think it's very tricky. I'm living in Berlin, you know, so.
Andrea, in Barcelona, I think it's very, very inspiring question because when we are talking about renovation wave or which are the actions that we need to improve our environmental conditions, in fact, what we are talking about is about a cultural change. You know, we need to change our behaviors in the city. We need to change how we move. We need to change how is the energy model. We need to change even what we eat in our cities. So if you want to change this kind of behaviors of our citizens and ourselves, we need to generate, I would say, an attractive alternative in order to make possible these changes. And this is the moment when beauty comes to be very important in order to generate an attractive alternative that makes people sure and able to make this kind of changes. For instance, if we want to people leave the car, stop and start walking, we need to create beautiful streets for walking. It's obvious. So I think, and I tried to say it at the first speech, that we need also to generate a new concept of beauty in the city, a beauty of a reflect of a new way of life in our cities, and also a beauty that makes possible this kind of behavior changes.
Would you resonate on what you are just saying, Xavier, the other ones? Because the beauty aspect, just for a second perhaps, how would you define the beauty we need in the city of today and tomorrow in order to address the challenges and goals the common goals we have?
Myself, yeah.
I think it should be human scale and nature scale, and I like to mention Stine in the beginning. I think she told us about how to overcome uncertainty, uncertain aspects of our life. And I think Martha Nussbaum, a philosopher, which I'm very fond of, says also that we live in a world of uncertainty and also of a lot of differences. And culture, beauty, to get in an exchange of perspectives. And I think this is the first step to a better world in the end. So towards cultural interventions and beauty and discussions about that, and to share different points of views or tastes, as you mentioned. That can help really then in the end to say, well, there are a lot of differences around and we don't know exactly how it will go further on. And we have to live with that, but we can establish a common goal for the next step. And this must be the aim, in my opinion. And cultural projects and beauty and aesthetics in the city can help to get the climate of exchange in this way.
Rasmus and Joseph, you want to resonate on that?
Yes, it's a great question you had, Andrea, and some very good input. I liked also Xavier was talking about the streets. We had this this survey in Oslo looking at what are the areas where people like to go and where do they tend to walk. And we see that people, if a certain facade is very dead, boring, typically long horizontal lines, people, they think they don't want to go there. And they also psychologically, they think it's very long to go that road, even though it shows, oh, it's only 200 meters, but nobody goes there. They go another way, which is 300 meters to get to the spot, because psychologically they experience it that way. So I think in terms of like beauty, what we focus on in Oslo a lot is there are certain principles. Like people don't like long horizontal lines. People don't like too much gray, black, steel, windows. We need some color. We need some variation. We need which is getting prettier with age and not even more sad with age. And using those principles, we can ensure that we have a beautiful city without picking a certain style.
This almost sounds like a manifesto, what we need. Rasmus, thank you. Joseph, and then I try to take some questions from the audience also that will be transferred to me. Joseph, Zwischenwasser. Jetzt sind Sie gefrozen, glaube ich. Josef Mattis wollte sich melden, hat sich gemeldet. Ich versuche gerade Ihnen das Mikrofon. Können wir Sie hören?
Ja. As far as aesthetics are concerned, how can you make sure aesthetics is being applied? Well, we in our little country have a construction culture, a building culture, but this has been initiated 40 years ago. It's a long-term process. It's not something that you can simply install with clicking on a button. It needs good communication. You need to communicate about all the positive results. You need public information network. We just heard you go for a walk. Yes, you create a public walks. You inform the public and the citizens, and we've got an award for good buildings. We've got the different categories, like building ground that is not to be changed. If there is no building being built, then the owner of this ground is awarded a prize. And it's an event with the citizens being invited, and then the ground can be used in whatever way. It doesn't cost lots of money to award this prize, but many people talk about it, and it's a reward for the owner of the ground. And whenever we have a public project, we have a big festivity afterwards. Well, if we build a building, we invite people and inaugurate the building. And all the people talk then, and we talk about building culture, about the change and the positive things we want to do all together. And apart from that, it's not a question of taste when it comes to architecture. Architecture has to serve people and the location, and it's got nothing to do with personal taste.
About the cohabitation of culture and nature, and bringing it so much together, not only in materials, but also in the sensual and in the visual sense. And that brings me back to the bigger cities. And maybe I can drop the question to Paris. We have this quart d'heure policy. So and this is supported by the mayor, who has been a tenant from a very dense area before. So to be reached, everything what we need to survive as humans in 15 minutes. And I think to organize that mobility, to change mobility. And if I'm not wrong, there was this Sorbonne professor, Carlos Moreno, who put the idea of putting the car out of our visions and bring it to the other stakeholders of city, not to put the car and car mobility in the very center of the city. So what has to change? Do we have to address mobility as a very, very core issue? Is one question I have. And the second question I have is, how do we bring this nature culture aspect really intertwined, very close together? So you can choose an answer. And maybe I go to the right side. That I also see you in Paris, Emmanuel Grégoire, because perhaps you want to resonate on the question of mobility, change of mobility, 15 minutes culture. Maybe this is a question you might want to answer.
La ville du quart d'heure est un concept de chrono urbain.
The 15-minute city is a very important concept, strategically speaking, in Paris. But let us be clear, the 15-minute city is not the self-sufficient city, an inward-looking city. No. The only relevance to the 15-minute city is to think in terms of the interconnection between the different cities. People misunderstand the 15-minute city. They think that you need everything within the 15-minute city. This is not the case. It's just not possible to have everything within the 15-minute city. But it's true that mobility is very important whenever we talk about the 15-minute city, because when we talk about the 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes by foot. It's important to develop urban microsystems based on the principle of proximity, where citizens are going to find something that will contribute to a higher quality. Schools have a pivotal role in the 15-minute city. In Paris, there is a multiplicity of schools that you can find in the fabric. And this has been examined from a sociological point of view. We've tried to combine this with the principle of proximity. We tried to also establish connections with the periphery, with the so-called arrondissement, and to combine this with the principle of proximity. And this is very much in connection with the beauty. Victor Hugo coined a sentence about beauty. He said that the use of the building belongs to the owner, but the beauty of the building belongs to everyone, to you and me. In one way, what we try to do, and I think that this is very much in line with the Bauhaus movement, it is to work on the very concept of beauty of use.
We are entering the last minutes of this panel. Time is fleeting. The last question to all of you will be, what do you expect from the new European Bauhaus Collective? A very serious and very important question. But first of all, I still want to resonate with an answer to the nature-culture question. How to put nature at the very center of our cities? Is there another answer to that? If not, we go to the Bauhaus. Your expectations. Rasmus, last contribution to the nature-culture question. Yeah.
So what we see in Oslo is that space is a scarce commodity. So we say that in the center, we prioritize people and nature above cars, which have been taking much too large place since the 1950s. So we have to prioritize space. You have to bring in nature. Nature is not the enemy, which it used to be in the old cities. It's our friend, and it helps us adapt to climate change and also give us clean air and nice surroundings.
Thank you. That was a quotable answer. But I think 2/3 of the people live like almost literally in urban forest in Oslo. So you have great conditions to make that possible. It's 11:43. I have a last round. Yeah, what you expect? Sorry, I say not what you expect from the collective, but from the new European Bauhaus. So I'm not talking about the collective in itself. Very last question. Yes, what do you expect from the new European Bauhaus as an initiative? Question to all of you. One sentence, everybody of you. Who wants to start? Maybe I go the ones I see first. Maybe first Emil, then Joseph, then Elisabeth, then Emmanuel, and then we go further to the right. So please go ahead.
It's a new source of inspiration. It's moving Europe to the next level of European dream. I think this is new Bauhaus. And Antoine de Saint-Exupéry mentioned once, a goal without the plan is just a wish. Now we need a concrete plan. And for example, a concrete plan is 100 climate neutral cities by 2030 of the European Union. So you have the context to build up a plan by 2030 to be climate neutral. And new Bauhaus, it's exactly including and fitting green, digital, and resilience and renovation wave in the context. Our city is proposing by 2030 to be the very first climate neutral city in Romania. Before 2051 is the concept of the European Union, climate neutral Europe.
When? Okay, we will be watching Cluj. We will really, this is really a goal. Okay, thank you for spreading this idea of the 100 cities. Who's next? Rasmus, you want to join? What do you expect? You are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Andrea. From my understanding and perspective, the new Bauhaus initiative, it's crucial as a part of the Green New Deal, which we're all embarking in, which is transforming into the green economy we need to save the planet and also ourselves ultimately. And what's so interesting about the Bauhaus initiative is that it's really about the soul of the green transition, how to connect with our history, culture, and beauty while we go through these major transitions. And I love that, and I'm looking forward to be part of it.
Thoughts? What do you expect? Was erwarten Sie von NEB, von dem New European Bauhaus?
What do you expect from the European Bauhaus? I do see European Bauhaus as a networking platform. I do think we should learn from one another. Now we needn't reinvent the wheel all the time. Let's learn from one another, work together. One example, we with our Landluft Association have a building culture award, and this award leads to an exhibition. It's a traveling exhibition that goes into the communities, and there we show why our prize has been awarded. So it's very important that if we want to change, we need to talk about it and explain it to the people and show the positive effects. Okay, Landluft Award is in the chat. We need this kind of incentives, and we need to talk about what we are doing. Next speaker.
Yeah, Andrea from Barcelona.
Sorry, yes. Oh, Xavier, you go first. Yeah.
Okay, I am expecting basically two main things. The first is that we will be able to generate a new idea of urban and rural development in our cities and our territories. And the second thing, that we will be able to create which are the tools that we need to achieve this new idea of development.
Thank you very much, Xavier. And then we are going to Paris and then to Munich. Emmanuel,
Oui, le risque est grand que le Green New Deal et nos discours politiques.
There is a great risk that the European Green Deal only empty words. This is a real danger. What we should make sure is that we make bridges between the vision that we all share and its implementation. We should maybe use pedagogy more. The objective of our carbon neutrality is exactly our objective. This is an objective we share, but fulfilling this objective is going to be difficult. It will require being methodical. That is why we should really walk the talk. For this, we need to work together, and I think that this is exactly what will be possible thanks to the new European Bauhaus. I could only agree with what Xavier and Joseph said. Elisabeth.
you. I hope really that these initiatives will help us to bring our mental maps together and to achieve a shared identity, because I really think that we are only successful if we look not only on technical approaches, but if we combine it with our tradition and culture, which is diverse in all our places and countries. This is very important for me to mention this again. And so I really hope that in the end, it will be more quality for all day users. I mean, this is what meine Bauherrschaft, my stakeholders are my citizens, no? And I'm not a politician, I'm only the urban planner of Munich.
But I'm looking forward when Bauherrenschaft is turning into Bauhauenschaft. Yesterday I learned from one of the facilitator that history is also her story. So working on that.
But I'm the only woman here. It should.
Yeah, I know. No.
Right.
I thank you all very much for these very sincere and loud contributions. I think a lot was heard outside. We had an incredible chat. We are saving the chat, this is for sure. Before, and please be attentive now, we are going into the coffee break. I ate 5 minutes of your coffee break. I'm very sorry. But before, I want to make sure we have to take another Zoom meeting now to meet again at 12 o'clock in the waiting room to go into the breakout sessions. So in the chat, we will now make sure that you see this Zoom meeting link and you have to connect and go there too, because only there we can meet and spread into the breakout sessions. There's a short description of all sessions in the program and there's a full description of all the sessions on the ACE website. So make sure we don't have a great big long time introduction of the breakout sessions, which of the 11 you want to go into. And as already mentioned, we have this great video of Bellevue de Monaco now in the breakout in the breaking pause, and we have a pre-survey contributions, 100 text and image contributions that you have been given to us. The survey was sent to you on Monday, and this will be playing out in a diorama style right after the video in the pause. So let's meet at 12:01 in the Zoom session on the other side. I think I said everything that was necessary. Yeah, please make sure if anything goes wrong and you get kicked out, go back to your initial email, make sure that you find the link. You will see the Zoom link, and below in the email that was sent to you, you will find the link for the breakout sessions. That's it from my part. Thank you very much for listening, and let's go collaborating now and co-creating now in the workshops. Thank you very much.